The wedding hall looked like a dream carved out of money and power, glowing under crystal chandeliers and endless strings of soft golden lights. Marble floors reflected designer heels, tailored suits, and gowns stitched with more pride than fabric. Every guest was someone important, someone known, someone who mattered in the world his family worshipped. This was not just a wedding, it was a statement. The groom stood at the center of it all, confident, polished, admired, a man society had already crowned successful. He smiled easily, shaking hands, accepting praise, playing the role of a man whose past was neatly buried. His family watched proudly, exchanging glances loaded with satisfaction and quiet superiority. Their whispers floated between silk scarves and expensive perfume, measuring guests by influence, surnames, and social worth. They believed this union confirmed their victory, proof that status always wins in the end. The bride arrived like calm elegance personified, graceful, composed, her smile soft and trusting. She had no idea she was walking into a story already written in secrets. As music swelled and guests settled, a final name on the guest list lingered unspoken, heavy and dangerous. Few noticed the empty seat reserved near the aisle, waiting for someone who would change everything. Laughter echoed, glasses clinked, and confidence filled the air, completely unaware of the storm approaching fast. Outside the hall, fate paused, holding its breath, preparing to walk in uninvited. Inside, the groom straightened his shoulders, unaware that the version of himself standing there was about to disappear forever. The celebration continued, perfectly timed, perfectly staged, moments away from becoming something no one could control. Every smile hid ignorance, every cheer sealed destiny, and the countdown to heartbreak had already begun. No one knew the past was about to arrive, breathing and undeniable. Months earlier, the idea had been born not from kindness but from cruelty wrapped in confidence. His family insisted she be invited because they wanted closure on their own terms. They believed seeing him marry into a better life would crush whatever illusions she still held. In their minds, she was a chapter that had failed to keep up, a reminder of a time before power and prestige took control. They imagined her arriving alone, eyes lowered, forced to witness how far he had risen without her. Shame, they assumed, would do the rest. The groom resisted at first, unease flickering beneath his calm exterior. He argued the past was over, that it was unnecessary. But the pressure was subtle and relentless. His mother spoke of dignity, his father of reputation, his relatives of proving a point. Eventually, he gave in, masking his discomfort with a careless shrug, saying the past was dead and buried. When the invitation arrived at her door, it sat there quietly, heavy despite its elegant design. She read his name, the date, the place, and understood immediately what it was meant to do. For a long moment she said nothing. No tears fell. No anger rose. There was only a slow breath, steady and controlled. She folded the card neatly, as if it held no power over her at all. Anyone watching would have mistaken her silence for defeat. They could not see the memories pressing behind her eyes, or the strength it took to remain still. She did not call, did not respond, did not ask why. Instead, she looked toward the next room, where the truth of her life rested quietly unseen. Her expression remained unreadable, calm in a way that unsettled even herself. The invitation had been sent to humiliate her, but it had unknowingly unlocked a moment that could no longer be avoided. They had not started as a scandal or a mistake, but as something gentle and real. Their love grew quietly, built on late conversations, shared dreams, and promises whispered with certainty. She believed in him before success shaped his confidence, stood beside him when ambition outweighed comfort. She sacrificed without counting the cost, adjusting her life around his goals, trusting that love would be enough. For a long time it was. Or at least it felt that way to her. When she needed him most, everything shifted. The joy she carried turned into fear when she realized how alone she was becoming. His family noticed the change before he did, or perhaps before he admitted it. Their smiles cooled, their words sharpened, and conversations about differences began to surface. She was suddenly not good enough, not polished enough, not from the right background. Reputation mattered more than affection, and whispers of shame replaced warmth. Pressure closed in on him from every side, until love began to feel like a liability. When she finally told him the truth, hoping it would bring them closer, she was met with silence instead of comfort. He promised to handle it, asked for time, asked her to trust him. Days passed. Calls went unanswered. Messages remained unread. Then came the day she understood she had been abandoned. No explanation, no goodbye, just absence. She packed what little she owned and disappeared from his world completely. To everyone else, she became a mystery, a woman who vanished without reason. What no one knew was that she left carrying more than heartbreak. She carried responsibility, fear, and a secret growing inside her that would tie her to him forever. She chose silence over humiliation, strength over pleading. Alone, she made a decision that would change all their lives, even if they did not realize it yet. The ceremony began exactly as planned, flawless and rehearsed down to the smallest detail. Soft music filled the hall as guests settled into their seats, smiles fixed, phones discreetly lifted to capture moments meant for admiration. The groom stood tall at the altar, composed and certain, while the bride approached with calm grace, her step steady, her expression serene. Everything moved smoothly, like a performance perfected through wealth and control. Then the doors opened again. At first, no one paid attention, assuming another late guest or distant relative. But the murmurs started almost immediately, rippling through the rows like a sudden chill. Heads turned. Conversations faltered. She walked in slowly, confidently, her posture straight, her face calm in a way that unsettled the room. This was not the defeated woman they had imagined. She looked composed, dignified, untouched by the years that were supposed to have broken her. And then people noticed she was not alone. One baby rested against her shoulder, small and quiet, while another was cradled securely in her arms. For a heartbeat, the hall froze. Eyes widened. Whispers ignited. Questions collided in the air, sharp and merciless. Who brings babies to a wedding like this? Are they hers? Where is the father? Judgment spread faster than understanding, fueled by shock and curiosity. The groom's smile faltered as recognition crept in, his breath catching before he could stop it. Guests leaned toward one another, voices low but frantic, trying to piece together a story no one had prepared for. The bride sensed the shift instantly, her calm wavering as she followed the direction of every gaze. The baby stirred, one letting out a soft cry that cut through the silence like a blade. In that moment, the perfect ceremony cracked, and the truth began to push its way to the surface, unstoppable and loud. The groom felt the room tilt as soon as his eyes met hers. Recognition hit first, sharp and unforgiving, followed by a wave of fear he had buried for years. His breath shortened, his chest tightening as disbelief struggled to keep him standing. He stared at the babies, then back at her face, searching for a mistake that did not exist. His mind began counting on its own, tracing years, months, moments he thought were safely behind him. The dates aligned with cruel precision. There was no escaping the truth. The math did not lie, no matter how hard he wished it would. His fingers trembled, the ring suddenly heavy, unfamiliar, mocking. Memories crashed in violently. Her quiet smile, unanswered messages, the day she disappeared without a word. He remembered the choice he made, the silence he accepted, the relief he told himself was peace. Now it returned as regret, loud and merciless. Around him, the music faded into a dull echo, replaced by the pounding of his own heart. He felt exposed, stripped of the image he had built. The bride noticed before anyone else. She felt it in the way his body stiffened, in the way his eyes refused to leave the woman standing behind the guests. Confusion crossed her face, followed by a tightening fear she could not name. She whispered his name, but he did not respond. In that moment, she understood something was terribly wrong, and whatever it was had nothing to do with her. She did not raise her voice or rush forward. She simply asked, calmly, for a moment. The request cut through the noise more effectively than shouting ever could. Conversations died instantly, eyes locking onto her with a mix of curiosity and irritation. Before anyone could object, one of the babies began to cry, a sharp, fragile sound that echoed through the hall. Then the second joined in, their voices overlapping, filling the space with something raw and impossible to ignore. It was no longer a performance or a ceremony. It was reality. She adjusted her hold, soothing them with practiced ease, and then looked directly at him. Her gaze held no accusation, no desperation, only truth. She spoke slowly, clearly, each word placed with care. She said the babies were his. The sentence landed like a blow. Time seemed to stop as the meaning spread across the room. Gasps followed, scattered and stunned. Then silence so thick it pressed against every chest. Faces drained of color. Some mouths opened, unable to form words. She continued before anyone could interrupt, laying out the timeline with quiet precision. She explained when she discovered the pregnancy, when she tried to reach him, when she waited. She explained how the pressure from his family made her invisible, how she understood what would happen if the truth came out back then. She said she left to protect the children, to spare them the shame and cruelty she already tasted herself. Each sentence peeled back years of lies, exposing choices that had been hidden behind success and smiles. The babies cried again, louder this time, as if demanding acknowledgement. The sound broke something in the room. Guests shifted uncomfortably, some covering their mouths, others staring at the floor. His family stood frozen, their carefully constructed image collapsing in real time. No one dared to speak. Disbelief hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. What had been planned as a celebration of pride and status unraveled into a reckoning no one had prepared for. The first to break was his mother. Her face tightened, then crumpled, the weight of understanding crashing down all at once. She stared at the babies as if seeing them for the first time, her breath coming unevenly as guilt replaced pride. Tears spilled as she realized what her cruelty had cost, how her cold words and calculated pressure had shaped this moment. The father tried to speak, but the room had already turned on him. Someone asked the question everyone was thinking, and the truth surfaced without mercy. He had forced the separation. He had made the calls, delivered the warnings, drawn the line between love and reputation. His silence now confirmed what his authority once denied. Relatives who once whispered about class and worth stood frozen, unable to meet anyone's eyes. The same mouths that mocked her absence could not form excuses for their presence. Every influential guest watching understood exactly what this meant. The carefully protected reputation fractured publicly, irreversibly. This was not gossip behind closed doors. It was exposure under chandeliers and cameras. Their social power, once unquestioned, dissolved as judgment shifted toward them. The balance changed in a heartbeat. The woman they believed they could humiliate stood unshaken, while they shrank under the weight of their own actions. Respect drained from the room, replaced by quiet condemnation. The family that once controlled narratives now had none left to tell. In front of everyone who mattered, they lost the authority they had spent years guarding. Power no longer belonged to wealth or influence, but to truth, and it had chosen a side they never expected. The bride stepped forward, her hand steady even as her eyes searched his face for something that could explain the chaos. She asked him quietly if it was true. Her voice did not shake, but the hurt behind it was unmistakable. He opened his mouth, then closed it again, words failing him when they mattered most. She asked when he knew, why he never told her, how he could stand there and promise forever while carrying a secret that large. Each question landed heavier than the last, and still, there were no answers that could undo the damage. His silence said more than any confession. Pain flickered across her face, but she held her posture, refusing to let humiliation take her dignity. She took a slow breath, absorbing the truth not just of the babies, but of the man she was about to marry. In front of everyone, she made her decision. She removed her hand from his, the gesture simple and devastating. She announced the wedding would not continue. Gasps followed, but she did not flinch. The ceremony stopped instantly, frozen in its tracks, undone in a single moment. There would be no vows, no celebration, no pretending. What ended there ended forever, publicly and without repair. The bride stepped forward, her movements slow but deliberate, every eye in the room drawn to her. She looked at him, really looked at him, and asked if what she had just heard was true. Her voice was calm, almost too calm, but the pain beneath it was undeniable. He tried to answer, his lips parting as if something might come out that could save them both, but nothing did. She asked when it happened, how long he had known, and why she was finding out like this in front of strangers. Each question demanded honesty, and each one was met with the same empty silence. There were no explanations that could soften the truth. She nodded slowly, as if confirming what she already understood. The hurt in her eyes did not turn into hysteria or rage. Instead, she gathered what remained of her dignity and stood taller. She realized the future she had imagined was built on a foundation already cracked beyond repair. Gently, she pulled her hand away from his, the gesture louder than any shout. She announced clearly and without trembling that the wedding was over. The words echoed through the hall, final and irreversible. The music stopped, the officiant froze, and the celebration collapsed into stunned quiet. In that moment there was no turning back. She did not demand anything from anyone. Not apologies, not compensation, not recognition. She had no desire for revenge, no longing for the life she might have had with him. All she wanted was truth, and with it, the dignity that had been denied to her for so long. She cradled the babies carefully, their small hands gripping her fingers, innocent witnesses to the storm that had just erupted. Every step she took away from the hall was deliberate, measured, a declaration of strength. Heads turned as she moved through the stunned crowd, but she did not falter, did not glance back. Her shoulders were straight, her chin lifted, carrying not arrogance but the quiet confidence of someone who had survived betrayal and emerged intact. The baby's cries faded into soft murmurs, and with each step, the whispers of scandal grew weaker, overtaken by the undeniable force of her presence. She had been underestimated, dismissed, and even humiliated, but she had turned every hurt into armor. Her exit was not dramatic, no grand gestures or shouted declarations, only the resolute march of a woman reclaiming her life. The hall behind her remained frozen in shock, the family and guests unable to process the loss of control. And yet, she felt no triumph over them, only the deep, satisfying clarity of self-respect restored. In the end, she had proven something far greater than social status or wealth. Survival, dignity, and the power of walking away with her head held high. The groom stood alone at the altar, the weight of silence pressing down like a physical force. He had lost both women, his bride who had walked away in dignity, and the woman he had once loved, who had returned with the undeniable proof of their shared past. Nothing he could say or do could undo the damage now. Around him, his family sat frozen, their faces pale and eyes wide, each of them confronted with the consequences of their arrogance. The carefully constructed image of perfection, control, and social dominance lay in ruins before everyone who had come to witness triumph. Whispers of scandal traveled faster than any words could, carrying the story of cruelty and neglect into the very society they had sought to impress. Reputation, once their greatest currency, had been spent recklessly and was gone. In their obsession with appearances, they had ignored truth, love, and the lives of others, and now they were paying the price. Everywhere he looked, he saw the results of decisions made in pride. Empty seats where respect once sat, shocked faces where admiration had been expected, and the quiet, undeniable power of a woman who refused to be silenced. Karma did not wait for subtlety or timing. It had arrived, and it had not knocked politely. It had walked in, carrying innocence in the arms of those babies, and left the people who thought themselves untouchable humbled, shamed, and broken. In the wreckage, only one certainty remained. Truth and courage always leave a mark, and some lessons are delivered in a way no one ever forgets.